evening. Welcome, everybody. How are you all doing?
Hey, we're doing good, doing good.
Everybody's
All
doing
right.
good.
Awesome.
Right.
Real
Glad
good.
to have all of you. As you know, this is the first episode of Justice Speaks. We are live and broadcasting to everyone, and so we hope that you clicked on the link. And we're just here to just talk about issues pertaining to social justice in the church and what we're called to do. I want to start off with a text that I think is very powerful, and I'm reading from the book of Isaiah, chapter 1, verse 17. I think this text encapsulates everything that we're trying to do. And Isaiah says, "Learn to do good, seek justice, help the oppressed, defend the cause of the orphans, and fight for the rights of the widows." And I think that's basically the mantra for all of us, that we ought to be speaking up for those that can't speak for themselves, and to be a voice for the voiceless, and to help them get things that they couldn't get before. And so with that being said, I'll just love it if my panelists can introduce themselves. We'll start from Pastor Kelly and go down to the greatest, Pastor Rebecca Davis.
Hey, I'm Michael Kelly. I'm pastoring at Mount Rubidoux on the West Coast, the best coast, Southern California, and just really excited to be a part of this conversation.
All right. Pastor Polite.
Yo, Pastor Mike Polite, all the way from the cold tundra of Andrews University here in Berrien Springs, Michigan, pastoring the New Life Fellowship and also doing this campus chaplaincy thing during the week. So glad to be here.
All right, all right. Pastor Edmonds.
Hi, Myron Edmonds, Cleveland, Ohio, home of myself and LeBron James, pastor of the Glenville Seventh Day Adventist Church.
Man, you from DC, man. You're not from Cleveland.
What's
You
up?
from
What's up?
Was all right, all right. And the rose amongst the thorns.
Hi, everybody. Rebecca Davis here, and I'm from Hotlanta. Can I say that? No. So I'm coming all the way from Atlanta, pastoring at the Atlanta Berean Seventh-day Adventist Church. Hi.
Okay, all right, all right, all right. So glad to have you all. So I want to start off. What is social justice? Like, please help me understand. What is social justice?
I would think social justice is really society. Obviously society and the social sectors of society. Everyone being able to experience equal opportunities as far as whether it be with jobs, whether it be with food, housing, but just being able for those in society to have a just way of experiencing life in society. That's the way I would, in the most simplistic way possible, define that.
Okay, all right. I'm feeling that. I'm feeling that. Anybody else want to chime in? What does social justice mean to you?
Yeah, I've been really wrestling with this concept. I think I've kind of graduated and evolved in my thinking of it, but I'm gonna go from a little theological slant just a little bit. I mean, the simplest way that I can express it, I guess, for those who may be viewing, who are trying to wrap their head around this, I really feel like social justice is the golden rule applied in a larger context outside of an individual. So for me, it's doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, but applying that to groups and races and people and demographics.
Okay, okay, all right. I'm feeling that. Doing unto others as you would have them do unto you. So this term has been thrown around. I mean, does anybody else want to chime in? Mike, Rebecca, you guys want to say something in regards to what social justice means to you?
No, I think they summed it up. The simplest thing would be to say like equality, but I don't know. I think they summed it up well.
Okay, okay.
So
Mike,
the
you
only
good?
thing the only thing I want to add to it is I think the dictionary definition gives a pretty cool turn or twist to it when it defines justice as a moral compass. So social justice, I think we can easily leap to the conclusion, is the application of a moral compass on a society. So when we're looking at establishing social justice in our environment, we're really taking on this tough task of getting people to buy in to an established moral norm.
Okay. All right. Cool. So, with all of that being said, and I like that, into an established norm. Yeah, Mike, you had to go get super deep on that, but it's all good.
Just now.
You can snap it up. So let's talk about the Adventist Church.
By the way, I just want to tell all of our viewers out there, he is putting up his hands like that to just really push forward this Johnny Manziel thing in Cleveland. So we see you, Myron,
We
and
see
we
it, right?
hope he does get to play next season.
Look, man. Oh, we got 7 viewers watching us right now, so we want to thank God for them. But what I want to talk about is this whole. All right, now, social justice, as we established from the text we read that we started out, has been in the Bible. There are over 100 texts that talk about social justice. Why is it that it almost seems like now the Adventist church is probably hopping on this bandwagon, or we're now getting involved with it? Any thoughts on that? Like, why were we doing this before or not?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's a travesty that we're kind of being unassociated with social justice, and I'm talking about our denomination as Seventh-day Adventists, especially with some of the recent events that's happening in the United States with African American men, and some of the atrocities, not only in the United States, because the Adventist Church is a worldwide church, we're seeing in Africa and all over the world. We have ADRA, we have community service, but I'm talking about in terms of social justice, looking at current events in society and doing something about it, having a voice in it, being at the table with it. This is actually historic Adventism. Adventism was sort of born in an era of the abolition of slavery, suffrage, the issues of women's rights. And these are all things that Prophet Ellen White and that the early Adventists, Edson White, Willie White, all these folks taking the latest technology of the steamboat down the Mississippi River, to reach out to black people. I'm saying this is a part of Adventism, and I think it sucks personally that we're being associated right now. Some folks will say historic Adventism has nothing to do with this. Well, they're wrong. We've been doing this, and it's a shame that we were absent in the civil rights struggle and so forth and so on. So.
Why do you think that? I'm wondering, Myron, why you think that is?
I mean, because of civil rights. During the civil rights era, I think we missed that window. Before that, in the early days of the Adventist Church, we didn't miss the window. But when civil rights came along, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, for the most part, was silent. Like a lot of other denominations, we weren't the only ones that were silent.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think we were silent? Is my question.
I mean, I would think based on
keep it going. It's good.
Based on what Myron's saying, I wonder when you look at the timeline, how much before we became more institutionalized and organized did we also become more silent when it came to that? I think the period by which maybe Myron might be speaking to, you got to correct me if I'm wrong, Myron, with the timeline as far as history, that maybe we were still a little more in the movement phase. During the civil rights movement, we're very organized. We have to be careful of what we say. I also think that what's happened today is our theology at times has been misinterpreted as a very separate from the world, so much so to the point that we don't deal with the world's issues. So we talk about the idea of being a royal priesthood of peculiar people. We're so royal and so peculiar, and this idea of maybe being a little more separate in the world but not of it, that we don't deal with the world's issues. Also, I think another part of what's happened today, I agree with you what's happened in history, but what's happened today is I think we are so, Jesus is coming, Jesus is coming, Jesus is coming. Let's not worry about what's happening now, because one day Jesus is going to come, he's going to make everything better, and so let's just get people ready for the second coming. Don't worry about the injustice you're experiencing now. Jesus will make up for it when he comes back and creates the earth made new.
I think that it's easy to hide behind the theology, though. I think at the end of the day, the world's issues are our issues, and we've hid behind our theology, but at the end of the day, it's still, what they are dealing with, we are dealing with. Racial issues, inequality, men and women, it's what we deal with.
Now
hid behind the theology, I think.
Yeah, and awesome points, Myron, Mike, and Rebecca. Our theology. Now that's where I'm having, I guess, the issues with. is our theology different from other theology, or from God's theology, the study of God? Because the Bible is explicit about defending the rights of the poor and the orphan and those things. I mean, you can't miss that in the scriptures. And to know that we started off well, and to see that we have kind of drifted from that, where we've become more insular, more concerned about ourselves and our programs and our agendas. Is there something that's happening with the theology that we're getting that doesn't prepare us, I guess, mentally to use the scriptures to speak truth to power, or to the issues that are happening, to, if I can make my point a little bit clearer, to marry some of the things that are happening, some of the events that happen in the Bible, to what's happening today? Mm-hmm. So, as far as we got food deserts. Like, can we actually sit down and see food deserts in the scripture? Some of the issues that people are facing. Does our theology, our matriculation through school, does it support social justice?
I think we have an illustration of this, that there's a pattern that we have fallen into. I mean, the Jews were the same way. I mean, if you look at the history of the Jews and the calling that God placed on the Jews, in Exodus, the 19th chapter, he says that when he made covenant with them, he was like, look, I brought you out of Egypt, and now I want you to be a kingdom of priests, which is to say, he wanted Israel to be the ethnic nation that would be the depository and the representative of God in the earth. And you look at all the prophets, he talks about justice, he talks about their ministry to the poor, and he said the poor you'll have with you always. So I'm just saying, and what happened to the Jews? Over time, because of the call that they had received, because of the possession of truth that they were given, they became insular. I mean, they got proud, they got arrogant. And come on, man, the bottom line is the Seventh-day Adventist Church. We're not the only denomination, but I'm saying we have, to me, in my mind, we follow the same pattern as the Jews, and we have gotten caught up in our truth and what we have, and getting ready for the Messiah to come the second time. That we've sort of forgotten about everybody else out there who's dying and going to hell. Yeah. And while they're on their way to hell, they don't have any food, they don't have any health care, they don't have fathers in their homes. There are neighborhoods in the United States, several of them, that have a 90% fatherless home rate in America. I mean, and Adventist churches, especially black ones, are in those neighborhoods, and we don't do nothing about it.
And I want to jump in. I want to jump in a little bit on the piggyback of what Myron said. I really think that where Adventism lost it is when Adventism adopted colonial values. So Adventism, as we see it now, is a colonial structure.
Break that down, though, Mike. Mike, explain that. Explain colonial values.
So the three signs that you could tell whether your organization is a colonial organization or an organization steeped in the tradition of colonialism, which is a Europeanized type of value system on how to conquer the poorer class and uplift the upper class, is first, your main value is to control the flow of currency or economy.
Mercy.
Second, your major goal is to control land and the deeding of land. And then finally, your goal is to control how people in a religious system see God. So as you look at Adventism now, and much of our literature, we'll go from the back forward. Much of our Adventist literature depicts God in an inaccurate sense, a Europeanized sense. So we have white pictures of Jesus, we have white pictures of disciples, we have white pictures of Samson and Esther. So they have controlled how we see God and how we see goodness, purity, and they put a color on it to try to disassociate that from any other color. And then we have the control of economics and tithing. And I would encourage anyone who's watching this thing to go back and research the Adventist theology on the storehouse. And you compare that to what colonialism is also pushing forward when it comes to the control of currency. And then finally, the deeding of land. If you are a local pastor who's watching this, or even a member, you will note the fact that although your local church raises the money for the building, your local church does not have the deed to that land. that you do not have any right to that land after you've raised that money to it beyond what is given to you by the conference structure. So if in fact you raise the money for a church and you decide to, God forbid, split off from the conference and start your own thing, you can't take that land with you, although you raised the money to purchase the land. You paid off the mortgage. So right there, we see these three major values that we now have in the North American division and abroad, worldwide. And those all three are signs that we currently have a colonial system. And colonialism has never been concerned with social justice.
Well, let me jump in there, and powerful points by both you, Pastor Edmonds, and both you, Pastor Polite. I think the colonialism is an effect not only in the church, but in this whole world. You know, that if once you look at there has always been a particular group that has controlled the earth's natural resources and wealth. And once you control those two things, you can determine how far people can go. And Pastor Edmonds, you were bringing about the point when it talked about we've become like the Jews. And I would even say that not only we've become semi-like the Jews, because what the Jews have that I think speaks powerfully to social justice is that the Jews have their own banking system, and they don't charge each other usury, and they don't go to Bank of America, they don't go to Wells Fargo to, you know, they probably own the banks, but they keep their money within their community. The black church and the amount of money that we as Adventists have within our system, why is it we don't have banks, we don't have more hospitals, we don't have these institutions set up so that we could drive out payday loan advance shops, or we can just have our money there that we could buy out some of our members that are in mortgage crises, refinance them, and keep them inside their homes. I mean, something's missing. And Mike, you hit the point with colonialism and indoctrinating a certain people to believe a certain thing, and they'll come out and do that thing. Like what Carter G. Woodson says, if you teach a man to walk through the back door, if there is no back door, he will build one in order to walk out of it, even if he sees the front door. So it's almost like, if I could say this, do we have a backdoor theology? A backdoor theology that speaks, that teaches us to just stay within the confines of what we're supposed to and not go beyond that, because if we go beyond that, we are vilified, we are called heretics, definitely, and we are no longer part of the system anymore, and that we are pushed to the side, and then they say, don't listen to that guy because he's not doing what we want him to do.
You know, I think the big issue, as we ask, is it our theology? Well, for me, I don't think it's so much a theology, because the Seventh-day Adventist Church is very big on studying the Scriptures. So we're not ignorant when it comes to the Scriptures. Where I think we fall short is what Jesus was doing with the Pharisees. And yeah, you know these Scriptures, but you're not putting what you read into practice, or you're only emphasizing certain parts of it in practice. So for me, one of the most amazing things is we tell these parables, and we're a church that's extremely big, of course, Seventh-day Adventists, on the second coming of Christ and preparing for the second coming of Christ. But Matthew 25, that chapter has a lot of social justice in it, because when you separate the sheep from the goats, and we're all in that theology, it's very clear. What did you do to those who were in prison? What did you do to those who were sick? For those who are less fortunate? And if you did that with them, then you're a sheep. If you didn't, you're a goat. Yeah. And not because you have to do it. Here's the thing Jesus says, even if we do it, we have to do it for not just the reason of getting the baptism, but just because that's what, you know, the people of God do. So I don't think it's simply in our theology, because I believe we have correct theology in the standpoint that we believe that the Scriptures are the unadulterated Word of God, they're to be followed. I just think, unfortunately, we don't put emphasis on the things that really put the gospel into action. I think we're a church that believes if you get knowledge, if you get the right information, or even as Polite said, if you're a part of the right system, everything's going to be okay. As opposed to saying, no, it's really about what our theology and how we take that, put it into practice to have an effect on the world that we are called to reach for Christ.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that text up too, because, you know, the perfect answer is hungry and you cut welfare. I was in prison and you privatized it and locked up more of me. So, you know, that's how, and the amazing thing is that Jesus says that right before he says, depart from me, I know thee not. So he doesn't talk about 2300-day prophecy, doesn't talk about state of the dead. He talks about what you did to the least of these. You have not done it unto me. Depart from me, I know thee not. So that, you know, that's an important part of what we preach and what we do, that I've discovered that I think we are most like Jesus when we're helping people that can't pay us back. That's when I'm most like Christ. It's not when I'm not sinning. It's not when I'm keeping commandments. It's when I'm helping those, when I'm being a voice for the voiceless, and I'm trying to lift people up to a level that they couldn't get there by themselves. So,
wait, can I say something?
Yeah, of course.
You know, those guys are a lot smarter than I am, but I think at the end of the day, I feel like, you know, just to kind of, I think, sum up what they were saying, because this is how I feel, that at the end of the day, it is about control and the bottom line, which is money. And we do help people, we do, but it's the way we want to, on our terms, you know, again, the way we want to help. It's not really, you know, going into our communities, infusing them with money and resources, doing certain things. It's you know, we raise missions to do this or to do that or the other. We do it on our terms, the way we want to do it. And again, I just think at the end of the day, it's about control at the bottom line. But I wouldn't say that we just don't do it. We don't help, you know, the poor. We do, but it's the way we want to do it and how we feel it should be done.
So then,
but I mean, I just think we need to. I mean, I think what Mike said, it's an issue of emphasis. I mean, my personal opinion is if you were just to lay out the Adventist truth on the table and just look at it sort of as a picture, man, I definitely see social justice in our theology. I definitely see. I mean, for example, you should look at our health message. Our health message, if we read it carefully, man, it has very little to do exclusively with just how one eats or what their diet is. But man, it takes into consideration the whole person. One of my favorite statements comes out with one of my favorite books, Ministry of Healing. I took this class when I was at Oakwood called Social Welfare, one of the best classes I ever took in my life. And man, they forced us to memorize this quote where it says, "Christ's method alone will give true success in reaching the people. The Savior mingled with men as one who desired their good. He met their needs, and then it says he bade them follow me." I mean, to me, that's a theology of social justice. I mean, it's not. I think what social justice has morphed so much into a political platform that I think it's lost sort of the baseline, grassroots, people helping people, period. And I mean, you don't need a $500,000 million budget to do this. I mean, right here in Cleveland, there was a lady right next door to our church. She had, she looked like a crackhead. Her kids looked like high school dropouts. They play basketball in the street. I'd see them for 4 years. I've been here, and I would just say hi and bye. Man, little did I know until the Holy Spirit led an elder of mine after a board meeting. We prayed, was like, God, yo, we want to make a difference in the community. The Holy Spirit told my elder on the spot, yo, go two houses down. There's a family I want you to go see. Dude, we go to the house. Man, I have never seen in my life, and I've seen some bad neighborhoods, man. I lived in Jersey, so New York, and I've seen Brooklyn, the Bronx, some of these places, Southeast DC. I have never seen a black person live in this kind of straits, man. It was in America. There was no heat. Here in Cleveland, Ohio, it's 2 degrees, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm saying it was a bad situation. We go in the house. Long and short of the story, we have a house. Our church owns a house. Man, we decided, look, they're in a house, no heat, by slumlord. Man, why don't we just open up our house that we've been using to pass out food and pass out clothes, and why don't we just turn it into a home and start a transitional home ministry? Boom, we did. We started. I mean, so I'm saying it was just that simple. It didn't cost us anything. But maybe like a couple $1,000s, to set some stuff up for the house. But I'm saying that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. I mean, simple stuff. And I'm saying that opens the door for us participating more often in these kinds of endeavors. But to me, the biggest issue is not racism, it's elitism. Like I would even argue, and I'm willing to have an argument, man, that colonialism is really a different, localized form of elitism. And to me, elitism is not just black versus white, man. We got black folk, man, who's in the hood, who drive into the city from the suburbs into these black churches and don't want nothing to do with these hood black folk in the community. That sucks. I can't stand that.
Yeah, and I feel you on that because I was actually mad at remember, I mean, it's kind of off topic, but I'm gonna bring it back. At VH1 when they had that show Sorority Girls, and I was kind of mad that AKAs and Deltas all of a sudden rose up because their brand was being tarnished by this show. But I'm saying, what happens to the other sisters that are being tarnished on Love and Hip Hop and all these other shows? But as soon as your brand is being tarnished, now you want to speak up to cancel a show. No, black women are being exploited. You are black sororities. You should speak up for the whole gamut of black women being objectified and marginalized on television, not just because it's your brand. And I think it draws back to the church, and this is how I'm bringing it back to the church, is that we are called to speak up for the rights of everybody, not just people who look like us or people who are on our social status. It's for everybody. And I want to also speak to the issue of, I think we need to establish in our theology that there's a difference between justice and charity. And why I'm saying that is because I think we get confused in thinking that feeding somebody is social justice, or or whatever it may be. Or going to the prison. That's doing justice. That's not doing justice, in my opinion. My opinion, doing justice is speaking to the powers that be, and knocking those systems down. Because if we keep going to the prison and preaching, and they're locking up more black boys, as in according to Jim Crow, we're just building a bigger congregation to go preach to every Sunday when we go into the prisons. And so I would push, and I know a lot of Adventists are kind of set back in regards to politics, but we need some more politicians. And we need to acquire more seats of power, because we could, like you said with the help message, my biggest beef is this. Yeah, we are people of the help message, but it pisses me off, and I'm using strong language, that we always want people to eat healthy, but when we drive in the communities around our churches and we look at their options, how do we expect them to eat healthy if all they have are liquor stores, Chinese food stores, and all this other stuff, and then we point the finger at them? So it is an elitist theology that expects people to pull themselves up by the bootstraps after we give it to them. But somebody needs to be lying down in front of these liquor stores and say, look, or to the councilman and say, look, I'm tired of you setting up these shops in our communities because you are killing our brothers and sisters. Now that's justice, in my opinion, because the Jesus that I read about went into the temple and flipped over the tables. He was like, all y'all payday loan advance shops, all you title loan advance shops, y'all got to go. Because when
so let me jump on that, back into that.
Yeah, I'm saying he healed people too. I just think that they're different. Oh, I'm sorry. Just say it real quick. I think they're different. If there's one hand, this one hand is social justice. I think you have different fingers to it. And I'm saying, although Jesus did go up and tear up the temple, he also healed people.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That the church had ignored because of their rules and regulations.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering, I'm almost wondering, listening to Jamie, I'm kind of feeling this idea that social justice is not necessarily about man-to-man interaction, but social justice may be more about man-to-systems interaction.
Definitely.
That social justice, at its essence, is the act of attacking or bringing charges against an oppressive system, not necessarily limited to helping those who are oppressed. I'm almost thinking that charity is the act of helping the oppressed, but social justice is the act is the prophetic act of crying out against an oppressive system.
And let me say this: when our system was created, the communities that churches were in did not look like the communities that you just described. And so to me, local communities was an afterthought. Overseas missions and dealing with injustice that way was the forefront thought. So when you're describing, communities looking like this and title loans, most of our, just to put it out there, most of the state churches are not in communities like that. You're talking about, and that was, when our system was created, that was what was, that was it. And so I think that, I agree with Polite, I'm sorry, on that, in that
colonialism.
From a totally different, our regional conference, we're out here in the hood, our communities, but to me, that was an afterthought of our system.
But I also think, though, when it comes to this, and even wanting to take down a system, and I think you still can have justice, of course, for individuals, in your local community and different things like that. But I think part of the problem that we find with our church is our members don't live in the community that our churches are. And so they don't feel, how many members do we truly have, like Myron, you just described, who don't have the heat or who are in a position where they have to use a loan mark? No. Now we'll hopefully try and baptize those individuals, so we'll have some charity ministries to try and baptize them in, but we're not really touched. That's why I love what Hebrews says. We don't have a high priest who is not out of touch with our infirmities. And so I think what we need to really understand is that the gospel of Jesus Christ puts us in touch with the oppression and the issues that we have, and just like there should be a hunger and thirst for righteousness, I believe the scripture also speaks for a hunger and thirst for justice, and that we really have to have that. And if it means, but here's the thing, again, I think it goes back to the emphasis in our theology, and in some cases wrong theology, because of our understanding of the scripture, which to me you can speak to without quoting the text. We need to have some of our people graduate from our schools and go into politics. But we're afraid to get connected into that world because, we look at the lamb-like beasts and all that kind of stuff. But we need to be able to be in those places so we can be at the table to start to have these kind of discussions. But even if we're not there, I do think we sometimes forget the power of the local church. And I think what we as pastors sometimes really need to do is just make a decision that we will be a church that will take on issues of justice. I was just at Andrews, and what's so amazing to me is I mentioned the word human trafficking, and half the people had no idea what I was talking about.
Wow.
They didn't know what human trafficking was. And that's a serious issue. That's a serious issue that's taking place. So I think the local congregations have always been, particularly when we talk about the black church, when it comes to justice, local congregations have always been the push forward, and those churches have had leaders who have gotten in and connected with city officials. And I think that's what we as pastors and need to really start to set that tone for, because if not, here's what I'm saying. You can keep as many Sabbaths as you want, eat as many veggie burgers as you want, and you can be as righteous, quote unquote, as you want. But God is going to ask us a very simple question. What did you do for the oppressed of my people? What did you do? And if we can't give an answer, I believe we're going to be judged accordingly.
Yeah.
Jamie, can I jump in on that?
Yeah, man, go ahead.
Man, one thing that I feel Mike is raising that I agree with 100% is that the social justice initiative of the 66 books of the canon has been extracted, methodically extracted from the pages. And so now what we have is even our spiritual disciplines are things that we teach outside the context of social justice. So case in point, Isaiah 58. So many people in church will hold fasting and prayer services. But I'm looking at Isaiah 58, and all the things that we do to fast, God looks at his people and says, yo, is that the type of fast that I asked for? No, this is the fast that I asked for. And then he goes down the line of different social justice initiatives that he wants his people to champion. So I'm looking at fasting and prayer, and I'm saying, yeah, let's pray. And let's look at Isaiah 58. And if your church is going to have a fasting season, then how about that fasting season be pushed towards addressing the oppressive systems that surround your community?
Yeah, and I think you all are hammering on excellent points. That, Myron, you said there needs to be two arms: the arm that does charity and the arm that does the justice. And what both
I
Mike
kind of
said.
disagree. I kind of disagree a little bit with that the definition that we have put together. Let me just tell you why. I just think that well, this is just a personal thing that I have.
Mhm.
I mean, I know some people that call themselves advocates for social justice. Okay,
Mhm.
and so they are engaged in advocacy. They're engaged in politics. They're engaged in fighting systems. Man, but they're driving down neighborhoods, to courthouses, to municipalities, and they're passing by brothers on the street, kids on the street, families on the street. Like, to me, even social justice has got a little elitism in it, because you have some people who kind of see themselves as, well, I'm the advocate, but they really don't have anything to do with the people. Like, I mean, one of the things I love about Martin Luther King, man, I saw the movie Selma, and this is like, he wasn't just out front, but he also was engaged in the lives of people as well. You follow what I'm saying? And
Yeah,
I just don't think that we should separate the two, or else we're going to have people advocating who are basing their advocacy off of statistics instead of off of real life situations. You follow what I'm saying?
So can it be both and?
Yeah, but I just don't know where we're getting this thing of there's social justice and there's charity. I just don't see that in the Bible. I mean, like, I see, if we're going to use Jesus as an example of the prime example of social justice, man, I see him fighting the system, and I see him helping the little man at the same time.
No, but I agree with that, and I think Jamie was saying something a little different. And I mean, Jamie, of course, you can speak for yourself.
No,
but
go ahead.
No, that's not what he was saying. He's wrong in what he was saying. I don't care what you say.
I'm about to kick you off this conversation, Myron. You don't disagree with the host.
But I think here's what part of our issue is. Sometimes, even in the charity, which obviously I do believe the two go hand in hand, I think here's the thing is, the reason sometimes we have to have as much charity as we have is because there's a system that keeps producing those situations. And so part of what I think we need to go a step forward, which is, if you want to use Martin Luther King as an example, while he's amongst the people, helping the people, he also understood that, which I understand going both together, I need to be in the White House, because while we're dealing with these situations on the ground, I can solve that situation tomorrow. But if the system is still in place to keep producing these kinds of things, we're always going to have these kind of issues. And so I think we have to definitely be charitable, but I think in order to really solve it, so like at Mount Rubidoux, we've really taken on the task of addressing human trafficking. So one of the issues we could do is help the young ladies who have been trafficked. However, we also participated in passing the law that if you got busted, you don't get 6 months in jail. You're getting 5 to 10 years to make the things stiffer. But in order to do that, we had to go and get to the courthouses and get it to the point where it was a prop pass on the new voting for that particular year. So they definitely both go hand in hand. But I think what we have to be careful of is we can spend so much time and feeling good about ourselves, which we should, in helping the people that we see in the immediate need. But I think social justice also deals with the bigger picture. So we want to help the Michael Browns, but we also want to attack, and I use the word attack intentionally, the system that allows the Michael Brown cases to take place.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was trying to emphasize, that I don't want to divorce the two, but I want to make sure that the two are known, that in our congregations, and we're going to, because this is supposed to be a resource to pastors, so we're going to try to help it, that in our congregations we have individuals who all have the passion to help people, but some people have different passions. So I would like to set up that health group that does those, I would love to see those health groups that does the block parties with the blood pressures and all of those things. But then I also like to see the group that's advocating for medication, so that these people can get medication, so that these people can get certain things that they are, I guess, they're supposed to have, that they don't have to fight to have. That's supposed to be freely given to them. And so that's where I think we're going. I think, Myron, you're saying the same thing too, that you don't want to have these elitists who are just so concerned about, oh, look what we did, and that they miss that passion of having that charity. So we want to be well-rounded. But
can I give you an example of what? For example, let me give you a social justice issue.
Yeah.
The prison pipeline,
Yeah.
which is basically, based on reading scores of African American boys. If they are illiterate past 4th grade, there is like a 90% chance that they will be incarcerated or in the system at some point in their lives. And then you begin to look at the criminalization of black men and people like Michelle Alexander, her book, The New Jim Crow, and this other brother, John, he's not a brother, a Jewish guy named Jonathan I think it's Meltzer. He writes on the same subject. And I'm saying, what I'm hearing them say is, yes, there's a problem with the education system. But in my mind, just as a local pastor, and there's some local pastors out here, you may not necessarily be an advocate or a one who's concerned about legislature. I mean, that's your passion. I'm saying, how do we fix black boys going into the system because they can't read? Man, we're gonna have some churches that got some reading programs.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, in my neighborhood, 80% of the neighborhood is millennial. 80%, and they're all in single-parent homes, and a lot of these kids can't read. And I'm just saying, I think what our people need, what they will benefit from the most, just as a pastor, these folks need to get engaged in the lives of these people who need these services, who need these opportunities to grow. They say the average black kid doesn't go in the urban neighborhood, doesn't go more than 7 blocks outside of his neighborhood.
Right.
I mean,
right.
I can fix that.
Yeah, and I'll put this out there, I guess, after offline, because City Temple is opening a reading center next month, and I'll give you guys all of everything that you need in order so that your churches can open one too, so that we can get these, because I believe reading is, that's the thing that will take you to the next level. And the statistics show when black boys, black girls, brown girls learn how to read, they're less likely to be in the system. And so that, it boosts their confidence so that they can speak better. So we'll speak to that. But
I want to respond to Myron. Is that cool?
Yeah, man. Call them out.
No, not calling them out, but I do want to give a response. So I still am feeling this burden for a distinction to be made between humanitarian effort and social justice. And I think the reason is because humanitarian effort changes now, but social justice changes the future. What social justice does is it leaves a legacy that changes a systemic ill. And I'm looking at the reading issue. So to me, humanitarian effort says, let's open up a reading center. Social justice says, well, how about we make sure that the school system in our district is reformed? See, those are two different things. And I almost see social justice as being the front line of the battle, and humanitarian effort being the infirmary behind the lines. It's a little bit away from that initial line of fire, but its job is to heal those who have been hurt, who are out on the battlefield. And I think Adventism has readily accepted the call to humanitarian effort, but it has forfeited its responsibility to take on social justice issues, which is to challenge a system that's causing or calling for all the humanitarian effort.
Yeah, because speaking to what you're speaking to, Polite, is it depends on how much we're willing to sacrifice. Because when you go against certain systems and you speaking truth to power, there is a chance you will be arrested. There is a chance that you will be blackballed. There is a chance that you will lose your job. And I think that's I think I read in the book that I'm going to recommend was that any leader who is not willing to sacrifice himself is not qualified for the job. And I think as pastors, we have to really look at that. How far are we willing to go so that others can have what they need? And when you look at Jesus, if we follow Jesus was willing to die so that others can have, as what Ellen White says, so that others can be treated, the way he deserved, and that he was treated the way that we deserve. So I think that's the part that scares us the most. Am I willing to take up this cross of justice, which means it may mean death, it may mean my family may have to suffer, and I think that's the difference between us and guys like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. and Huey Newton, these people who were freedom fighters. These guys were willing to sacrifice whatever they had just so that change can be brought. And it's sad that it seems like you got to die in order to see change, but you can still do it in your lifetime. So how far are we willing to go so that the voiceless can have a voice, so that we can see some change? And I think that's the issue right there with us.
Are you suggesting that we take up our cross and deny ourselves and die? I hear you guys, man. I do. I'm not trying to, disparage the political advocacy piece, because I just think they work hand in hand, and I just think we're failing at both of them. I do. I mean, some people will say, well, we're doing pretty good at humanitarianism. Going to any black church or Adventist church and tell me what they're doing to change the lives of people in their communities and in their cities. Come on, man. We don't have a lot of churches that's really making a humanitarian impact, and for the most part, we don't have, our system is not doing a good job at fighting systems that are oppressive. So I don't know. I think we're failing at both. But just for the pastors that are watching, who are in churches and want to know how they can be engaged and involved, the approach that I've decided to take, based on you guys' definition, is the humanitarian approach, mainly because I just feel like there's a need. See, young adults, there was a study done, and basically the study discovered this with millennials and young adults. I mean, that the way that they relate to God experientially is through humanitarianism. Like, the old school generation, you would say they like to go to church and attend services and serve in auxiliaries. But this new generation, man, they instead of going to Sabbath school, you know what they would rather do? They'd rather be out there in the community feeding the poor and giving out school supplies and those kinds of things. And I'm saying, as a leader in my congregation, man, I feel a burden to galvanize this group of people who are dying spiritually, who for a want of being engaged in the transformation of somebody else's life. You know what I'm saying? That thing bothers me, that most of the members in our church have never led anybody to Jesus, have never really done anything in the community in which their church is in to make somebody's life better. To me, I guess that's my passion, and I guess that's why I lean so heavily towards.
Let me throw this out there, and I know, Kelly, you've been doing these conversations connecting with officials in your community. Polite, you did the march, and Myron, you had that thing you did on the Sabbath with handing out backpacks.
Well, I actually did a march as well when Tamir Rice was shot here in Cleveland, a 12-year-old boy, by the police officers. So we did march as well.
So my question is this: do we need, on some Sabbath mornings, to just shut down the service and just be out in the community?
And I know that would be
every Sabbath.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes. I think Jesus provided a good model. The Bible is real clear that he's in the synagogue and then he's out in the streets. I mean, he'd be in the synagogue as his custom was, but then he went out in the streets. For us, we're in the synagogue and then we go home.
And then we're in the sheepdog.
Yeah. All day long doing our own thing. Or we're in the synagogue all day. And we create programs to get as much in the synagogue on the Sabbath day as possible. So go home, eat real quick, then hurry up and come back for AY or this concert, which ain't got nothing to do with nothing. I hate to say it, except for us. So one of the things, though, I think, besides the conversations that we've been having at Rubidoux, is a lot of us think we have to reinvent the wheel. What I've been on a very clear mission for the last 4 months is I said I'm going to be on every single community something I can be on. I just met with a team called the Riverside Coalition for Police Accountability. I just had breakfast. This other thing is called Breakfast with the Fellas. It's just all different community leaders and different people who come together. And here's the thing I found, y'all. This is crazy. Half the stuff that we talk about, we want to do. So Myron, for example, you talked about starting something for educating people, helping them to read in our church. I guarantee you the community's already doing it. I guarantee you they're already doing it. Some program that's already taken place. So what I have said that we're going to do as Rubidoux is we're not going to necessarily try and reinvent the wheel, but what we are going to do is say, okay, where are people in the community doing social justice, and we are going to give them our support. And it's going to be very clear that Mount Rubidoux is standing with the community, not simply starting our own thing, that separatist, I think, tendency that we have, but we are partnering with you, we're mingling with you, because Ellen White also makes it very clear that we need to find common ground with different people, and let's operate on that common ground. So I found at this last meeting I was at, called with the fellas, that, man, the San Bernardino County has a huge program called From the Cradle to Careers. And they have this huge strategic plan in which they are trying to put things in place where they can make sure that people make it from the cradle to having a successful career. Man, I don't need to reinvent the wheel with that. I need to find out where their energy is, and I'm a partner with them to do that. So those are the things we're doing. Human trafficking, we didn't start that all on our own. There were people already participating in the fight against human trafficking. We partner with them. So I think if you're listening to this, if you're a church member, if you are a pastor, find out what's already happening and then just start to put your energy and resources in there. And some people, that's a little uncomfortable because people say, well, what if they have you doing this and that on the Sabbath? You doggone right I'm going to be doing that kind of stuff on the Sabbath, because that's what the gospel is about. It's about setting people free.
I'm not gonna lie.
I
heard about what they were doing, what Kelly was doing out there with human trafficking, and we honored a woman this past Sabbath who works with the National Center for Civil and Human Rights here in Atlanta. And so her and I were able to talk afterwards, and we're actually going to partner with them to try to, to fight against human trafficking here. She was like, Atlanta is such a huge hub for where, conventions and stuff are held just for the purpose of trafficking and, buying men, purchasing sex. And so we're going to be partnering with them here soon. And I just think that that's an awesome thing. There are people out there already doing it. And, we need to just get involved, start partnering up, let them know that we're here. And, we're not just going to stand by. We want to help. We want to do it.
Right.
And I really think, I'm really digging, Mike, how you made your point about the Sabbath. You really brought in this concept of what is lawful on the Sabbath. And, we got some heat here for organizing a march on the Sabbath. Now, first of all, I thank my lovely mother.
Oh, man.
Uh-oh.
So
Hey, listen, is he there?
He's still talking. All right. So look, man.
Am I there?
All right. We missed pretty
me?
much like the meat of what you were saying.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, so I want to give a shout out to Donna Marie Polite, my mother, in Dallas, Texas. Shout out to City Temple. We got some heat when it came to organizing on the Sabbath. She called me, man, the morning of and was like, Mikey, I'm going to tell you the truth. I didn't think that you should have done that on the Sabbath until I talked to God about it, and he revealed to me that Joshua marched around Jericho 7 days, which means one of those
It have to be the same.
And I said, yo, amen, Mom, amen. I mean, there was a peaceful protest done in the Bible on the Sabbath. And I really think that what our generation is looking for is not just training in the area of the humanities, But I think there's something missing when it comes to training them in the science of civil disobedience. There is a science to this, and it's beautiful to see the energy that civil disobedience and an understanding of how to come against systems can really energize your youth.
Yeah, we got 3 minutes, so I'm going to give everybody a final word, and then we're going to wrap this up. Continue it.
Yeah, you know, I think if I would say, you know,
man, we got all these.
Hey, Mike's feed has a demon in it, man.
That's right, man.
Say Andrews, that snow in Berrien Springs messed up his connection.
That's right, man. That's right. That's an illustration right there. Get out of Berrien Springs. Good. Who wants to say something? Kelly, you want to say something?
Yeah, you know, just in close, I think what's very important is we have to not allow our Sabbath, for example, theology to be an excuse for us not to get involved. There are so many things that we miss out on as a church when it comes to our community because of the things that actually do happen on Saturday afternoon. And I think, you know, if we really look in the scriptures and we actually did something, one of the values at Mount Rubidoux, we want to be radically biblical. And when you look at the idea of going out and taking care of humanity on the Sabbath day, I'm using that as an example. That is the most biblical thing you could do, because when you see the argument, those who are out helping those fall on the side of Jesus, those who try to use theology as a reason not to, very clearly in the scriptures, and it's not an offense to anybody, fall on the side of the Pharisees. And that's why I think we have the story of the man with the withered hand. The withered hand was not an emergency. There was no emergency with that. But Jesus wanted to give us a point that, dude, help somebody. Even if it's not an emergency, be connected. So the last thing, because I know we're out of time, is I challenge all of those pastors and members who are listening to be intentional about going out and finding out, here's the key, what's happening in your community and where the need is. Don't assume that you know. Find out what's happening first. And when you find out what's happening, then you put some teeth behind it and actually begin to start to erect and make a difference in there by being involved, connecting, and partnering. My biggest message to us tonight, partner with the community to solve the issues of the community.
Amen.
Wait, can I say something in addition to that?
Yeah,
I know we got to go.
Go ahead.
I just want to say that in addition to what he said, I think it's important, too, for us as pastors to begin to re-indoctrinate our members to know that community matters, and not just far away missions or, you know, things that don't, but where we are right here. And, you know, I think our system has really kind of gotten us out of the mind frame that our communities, our local communities, are important, and to go beyond ourselves, you know, to take an outward focus, not an inward focus on our programs, our own departments, different things like that, but to really begin to think community and not just our you know, track attack days or whatever the case may be. I think we have to start really putting that back into the minds of our members.
Yeah. Edmonds, any final words?
Yes. My final word is this. Specifically with young adults, if you want to get young adults and young people, this is my son, if you want to get young adults and young people involved, pastors in your church, you got to find something outside of the box of typical church order of service, your Sabbath school, your worship service. You got to utilize your Sabbaths, your Sundays, your Mondays, your Tuesdays to get engaged in meeting the needs of people. Look at the healings of Jesus. Out of all the healings of Jesus, I did a study on it. 2/3 of them happened on the Sabbath. And just to co-sign what Mike was saying, I can't think of any one of them that was an emergency. Not one of them was an emergency. No, there was very few on the Sabbath that were life and death. Jesus met people's needs on Sabbath. I think the Sabbath is a great day to make a great statement about what Adventists are all about.
Yeah. Awesome, awesome. And my message is to the pastors, and I strongly believe that our congregations are a reflection of who we are, and that we need to continue to push from the pulpit the issue of reaching and helping those in a prophetic voice that the Bible calls for. And education is key in reading. And so one of the books that really changed my life, I want to recommend this book. Is called The Politics of Jesus by Aubrey Hendrick.
Yeah.
And it's about rediscovering the true revolutionary nature of Jesus' teaching and how they have been corrupted. Now, this book has been awesome. It's Aubrey Hendricks is a PhD. He teaches at Union Theological Seminary. So I just want to encourage us to read as ministers, to partner, to get out, wake up, stop watching Netflix, get off of Hulu, wake up in the morning, go reach out, touch some people, get involved, get your youth motivated, and let's do this thing. Let's turn this thing upside down, because I believe that's what Jesus is calling us to do. And so I want to thank you all for the 24 viewers. We were up to 30 viewers at one time. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank my panelists for sacrificing the time to do this. And we will be back. We'll be back. We're going to have another conversation with another topic. So we want you to stay connected to YouTube, stay connected. Follow us on Pelk Power Live. Get our Google+, get everything on, and stay connected so that you can know when the next episode will air. So I thank you for coming on. Holla at your boy. Get that chicken dinner, as they say in New York City, and enjoy yourselves. And let's close out with a prayer. And if Pastor Davis, if you won't mind, can you shut us down with prayer, please?
Yes, Larry. God, we're so grateful just for the conversation that we have begun here with Justice Speaks. And we're just asking that your Spirit will continue to lead us and guide us and direct us. Show us the ways that you would have us to move. Just speak to each person who is watching. And God, continue to pour into the hearts of us as pastors, and we're just asking, God, for you to lead us, Lord, in whatever way, so that we can bring, justice to the widows, to the poor, to the fatherless. God, we really want to uphold your word, and so as we seek to honor you, please honor us. We love you, and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All right. See you later.
Bye.